Welcome to the Faulkner County Museum's 18th annual but first ever virtual holiday open house event. We have a special segment for you on the processing and cooking of an heirloom squash grown at the museum during the summer of 2020. Please enjoy our piece on cooking a Cushaw. Many people ask, what is a Cushaw anyway? A Cushaw squash is a member of the crookneck squash family. It's actually a winter squash, and it grows to be huge, anywhere between 10 and 20 pounds. One vine can grow up to a dozen squash. These squash are very mild in flavor, and the plants are resistant, not immune, mind you, just resistant to squash borer bugs. That's a great thing if you live in the South. Sometimes they're referred to as Tennessee sweet potato squash or Navajo tail squash. Sometimes Cushaw is spelled with a K. Today, Cushaw squash are often sold in the fall as ornamentals, used for decorating. Historically, these squash served as very large packages of potential food during late summer and early fall. They also keep well, so they can be used over the winter months if stored properly. The museum, in collaboration with the Faulkner County Master Gardeners, maintains an heirloom vegetable garden where old-timey varieties of vegetables are grown and seeds are saved. When a local heirloom gardener, Bell Urban Farm, donated a Cushaw squash plant, we decided to try growing it. After asking around, several of the master gardeners recalled eating the squash as a child. One had a grandma who would make 5 or 6 pies at Thanksgiving from one squash. But no one we asked had ever cooked one. So we decided to document the process and cook one. After a summer of growing, we harvested the Cushaw squash in August. We created a short video of Museum Director Lynita in the garden and posted it on this YouTube channel. In it, we featured our heirloom garden and we showed the squash that we harvested. After that, Lynita took 2 of the very large squashes home to process. To start, we weighed our squash using our bathroom scales. One weighed 20 pounds, another 23.4 pounds. These are quite large, and admittedly, they presented quite a challenge for processing. How do we turn this big thing into something that will fit into a pot? Basic tools that you will need for processing the squash include a very sharp knife, a cutting board, a large spoon, and several bowls to contain the peels, the seeds, and the cut-up squash. Additional tools that we found helpful include a small paring knife, also very sharp, and a vegetable peeler. Be forewarned, squash butchering is very messy and ideally done outside, near a water hose. With your very sharp, very big knife, cut the ends of the squash and toss them into the compost bowl or bucket. You'll notice that the flesh of the squash is a buttery yellow. It's very pretty. Next, cut the neck off the squash at the point it starts to transition into the body of the squash. There's no right or wrong spot here. You're basically cutting the squash into 2 manageable pieces. You can now begin peeling the squash using the vegetable peeler. We found that the skin is quite tough and it's easier to use the peeler than a knife. When the neck is peeled, you're ready to cut it into slices or cubes or both. From our 20-pound squash, we cut the neck into several large slabs like steaks and a large bowl of cubes. Now for the body. With the very large, very sharp knife, slice the body in half. You could use the peeler to peel the squash body before slicing. We just didn't do it this time. Use the spoon and your fingers to scoop out the seeds and the stringy pulp. Save those in a bowl. With the vegetable peeler, peel the squash body, discarding the peel in the compost bowl or bucket. You can now cut up the squash body into the desired shapes. We cubed ours, and beware, it makes a lot. In this slide, you can see the cubed squash, some slabs, and a bowl of seeds and pulp. The process of peeling, cutting, scooping, and cubing took an hour for one person to complete. Before we cook the squash, how about preparing the seeds for saving? These are heirloom seeds, which means they may or may not be available from your local seed seller. But no worries. You can do your own seed saving and plant them next year. You can also share them with friends or exchange them for other seed varieties you'd like to grow. You can donate extras to a seed bank or attend a seed swap. It's a great way to meet new friends and learn about other heirloom varieties. These seeds were very difficult to separate from the stringy, pithy stuff. So we just put the whole thing into a container and covered with water. These seeds look a lot like pumpkin seeds. A note here, if you don't want to save all the seeds from your squash, you can roast them, just like pumpkin seeds, and they are very tasty. Cover the pith and seeds with water, cover the container loosely, and let it sit for a couple of days. Don't forget about them. They will remind you in a very powerful way. After the seeds ferment, you can separate them quite easily. The good seeds sink to the bottom of the container. Bad seeds, and all the stringy pithy stuff, floats, and it is easy to pour off. Spread the seeds out on a paper towel to dry for a couple of days. Put them in an airtight container and then freeze them for another couple of days just to kill off any little bugs or biological organisms. You can then store the seeds in a cool, dry place in their airtight container until planting time next year. You want to use these seeds within 3 years because after that the germination rate drops dramatically and your chances of getting plants are reduced. Okay, enough of seed saving. Now that we have our squash peeled and cut up, let's cook it. We cooked our squash using 3 methods. We boiled it, we pressure cooked it, and we roasted it. Master gardeners we interviewed said they remembered their mom or their grandmother using Cushaw squash in the same way most people use pumpkin. They would make a puree and then season it up for a pie. So we tried boiling. Just put your cubed up squash in a large pot and cover it with water. Bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, and simmer gently for about 30 minutes or until fork tender. If time is an issue, you can put the cubed squash into an Instant Pot or other type of pressure cooker, add a 1.5 cups of water, and set it to manual for 10 minutes. Let it slow release for 10 minutes and the squash will be very tender. It's a lot faster than boiling. After the squash has cooled a little, drain the water off and either mash with a potato masher or run it through a food processor and puree until smooth. At this point, season it however you like and put it into the recipe of your choice. Roasted butternut squash is a popular dish at the warehouse, so Lynita tried roasting the Cushaw. You could do this with either cubes or roasting some of the slabs cut off from the neck. The slabs are pretty easy. Coat them with oil or butter, salt lightly, and place into a greased dish. Cook at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, poke the surface full of holes with a fork, drizzle a little heavy cream over top, and return to the oven for another 15 minutes. Remove from the oven, sprinkle cinnamon sugar mix over the squash, drizzle a little more cream on top, and return it to the oven for another 15 minutes. Delicious. Pumpkin pie is also a huge seasonal favorite at the warehouse. So Lynita tried substituting the Cushaw for pumpkin puree using her favorite pumpkin pie recipe. We've included the recipe here if you would like to try it. The Faulkner County Museum holds in its collections numerous handwritten recipes from local residents. We found this pumpkin pie recipe in our collection recently. The recipe differs slightly from the one previous, but it also sounds very yummy. Maybe we could try them both. There will be a lot of squash to work with. Maybe you don't care for pie or roasted squash, but you love soup. Ever have squash bisque? Thick and creamy, this soup is sure to please on a cold winter day. This recipe is great served with a thick slice of homemade bread. Thank you for stopping by our virtual open house today to learn about the museum's heirloom garden and the vegetables we grow as part of our mission to preserve the old ways and to educate the public on the history and the prehistory of Faulkner County. We hope you enjoyed the adventure in squash processing, and maybe you will try growing some of your own. If you have any questions regarding the museum, our exhibits, or programs, please do not hesitate to contact us. Here's our information. If you make something using a Cushaw, please share it with us on our Facebook page. Thank you again for stopping by our virtual holiday open house. We hope to resume face-to-face events in 2021. In the meantime, stay safe and have a happy holiday season.